Fulfillment is when you are living a life that you are capable of living, which you choose and which you live, not because you have to, but because you're capable of it. Remember, I'm here because I'm needed here, not because I need to be here. I could be elsewhere. I'm here because I'm needed here. And I stay where I'm needed because I want to, because I can, because I have a gift.
Why do we use the word crisis?
We use the word crisis because someone is acting as if the life they have taken on is one that they don't want anymore. So they feel that an absolute change is necessary. And they try something else on. Usually, what they try on, because they're not particularly well, is just going to be a repetition of what they did before. I'll give you the easy example. My wife is not the wife that meets my needs. Statement of immaturity. So what am I going to want? What am I going to want? I'm going to want another wife. Well, who am I going to look for? Well, I'm going to look for the same person I looked for in the past. Because we tend to model on the parents that traumatize us. I'm going to look for the parent that I see as being normal as a partner. And I'm going to look for that in a contemporary of mine, person my age. I'm going to reinvent that person over and over and again. In fact, I'm going to make the same mistake over and over and over again, but it's going to be very disruptive because I'm going to abandon people that I formed relationships with. I'm going to let people down who expected things of me.
Is the stereotype true that, a midlife crisis is when you buy a new sports car and you get a younger lover and you hit the gym?
Well, yeah, that happens a lot, or variations of that sort happen a lot. We know that because sports cars are not in danger of, not being sold anymore. It is very interesting. The demographic on people who own sports cars tends to be older people.
Is it because of the midlife crisis or is it because they finally have the money to afford one?
Young people today can drive very expensive cars. There's two reasons why they can do it. First of all, their parents might be giving them the money to do it, but the big one is leasing. I don't have to have an enormous amount of money to buy an expensive car. But what I'll probably choose is something like a Hummer or a Beamer or a Mercedes-Benz or a Lexus or something like that. What I probably won't buy is a sports car, even though it's probably not going to be more expensive than any of those. Well, why? Because I feel that if only I made myself attractive to the kind of woman who would meet my needs, I'd be happy. You've said a great deal right there, haven't I? First of all, I'm immature. I don't recognize what a relationship's for. It's about the opportunity to be responsible to somebody else and build something with somebody else. I just think it's about, somebody satisfying my different urges.
Do they
Look,
feel trapped?
yeah, generally a person who is in a midlife crisis is going to feel trapped. And that's interesting, isn't it? And they're going to assume I'm trapped because I'm in a bad situation. The people around me are not adequate to my needs. The real problem is I'm not a very mature person. I haven't learned to cope with or enjoy truly adult things. A real adult gets the greatest satisfaction from entering into a relationship with someone that he's capable of building something with, that is capable of being there for, so that they can be comfortable together. A real adult knows that the goal of life is not to be happy. It's to do what you were meant to do.
Which is what?
Depends on who you are. Depends on the situation depends on what the situation in which you find yourself calls you to do.
But isn't it all up to interpretation? Like, how do you know what the right thing to do is?
That's a good question, isn't it? There's trial and error, but there's also responding to need that is not your own. People are called upon to do things, and you sort of say, I was called upon to do this because I'm the one who can do it. You know, there's the famous saying, right? If not me, then who? If not now, then when? If not here, then where? To an adult, these are not academic questions. They're the questions that are going to confront an adult as he becomes an adult.
Is part of what they're experiencing because their dreams never came true?
Their dreams couldn't come true because they weren't real. Their dreams were dreams of being loved in the way they should have been loved, but weren't. That's never going to happen. Let me correct myself a little. I said real adults don't have midlife crisis. I think that's true, but I think there are different levels of poor mental health. There's the poor mental health that says, well, the world sucks, it's not meeting my needs, so I'm going to go and I'm going to look for my needs to be met somewhere else. And I think that's a sign of very, very poor mental health. And generally that's going to see a lot of hurt, and it's just going to see the individual repeating what they did before, and they still won't be happy. Then there's a slightly greater, a healthier response, which is the person who says, you know, I'm really fucked up. That's why this isn't working for me. There's something wrong with me. That's a great deal great. That's a lot more maturity than the first, because at least it's based in something true. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I know something is. A person like that might well explore what's wrong with them. They might try and do something about it. Sadly, that's really not something you can do on your own. You need help with that. And you know, that's when you reach out to people who you think might have some wisdom.
Like who?
Think traditionally, who did people reach out to? They reached out to their elders, they reached out to priests, they reached out to teachers, they reached out to people that they saw as being older and wiser than themselves. And to a certain extent, that's not a bad choice. That's not a bad choice. There's also mental health professionals. They're good therapists. They're really worth reaching out to. They're really bad therapists, and it's really unfortunate when those are the people that a person who recognizes something wrong with them reaches out to, because they're going to send them in the wrong direction.
But what if those sort of solutions, getting a new lover, transforming your body, or buying a car, what if those are good?
Let's look at what good would be. Good would mean they would fill up the deficit that we see in our lives. Make me feel, that's what I'm going to be happy now, right? I'm going to be fulfilled. I'm full of happiness, where before I was empty. Why? Because my needs are now getting met.
But isn't it worth a shot?
Here's what you will see almost inevitably. You will see someone who gets very tired of what they're doing, and then stops and then starts again and stops and starts again, and the wheel will turn and turn and turn. And it will be quite apparent to anybody watching them that they become a slave of the behavior. What they're doing is not something they seek. It has become a compulsion, and they become a slave of it. Why? Because it's not making them happy. What it's doing is distracting them from that emptiness that the behavior promises to fill, but in fact can never fill.
But isn't the point that they're not happy?
Yes, that's right.
So at least it's going to make them happy, even if it's for a minute, right?
Well, is that what happiness is? Or if that is what happiness is happiness all it's cracked up to be? If happiness does not fulfill me, if, happiness we describe as this, I don't know, this momentary feeling of relief, the release of all sorts of dopamines, which just give me a euphoric sense, very much like morphine does when it takes us out of our pain. If that's happiness, and I'll grant, maybe that's what happiness is it worth very much? Is that a fulfilled life?
But isn't all fulfillment fleeting?
I think not. Fulfillment is when you are living a life that you are capable of living, which you choose and which you live, not because you have to, but because you're capable of it. Remember, I'm here because I'm needed here, not because I need to be here. I could be elsewhere. I'm here because I'm needed here. And I stay where I'm needed because I want to, because I can, because I have a gift. Notice the person who buys the car to feel better is not developing or expressing a gift. He's gifting himself. And that's the difference between fulfillment and what a lot of people do call happiness.
Gifting themselves.
Yes, that's right. The Greeks have a word for the fulfilled life as I've described it. And frequently it's called happiness, but that's really wrong. The better name is well-living. It's eudaimonia. Eudaimonia. And no Greek would say, oh yeah, that's happiness. What they'd say is, no, that's living well. And that's what we should aim to do.
But aren't we told that from all aspects of society these days, self-love is the best kind of love and you should be selfish and put yourself first?
That's what we would tell people if we wanted them to remain children.
Why are we being told that all the time now then?
Why would you want, first of all, why are we being told it? Let's do this. Let's say who's doing the telling. Where are we hearing this? Because I agree. The populace in general has been giving messages in a way that it's never been given messages before. It's getting messages every day, all day. This is anomalous. It runs against the silence in which people lived for thousands of years. Where are these messages coming from? Well, they're coming from the media. What is their purpose? Their purpose is ultimately promotion. Promotion of things. Things you will get by purchase. Back in the 1920s, a very deliberate decision was made by a number of people. The idea was that the new media, and they were new in those days, like radio, could be used to sell things. They could be used to sell things. And they could be used to sell things that you didn't need. And that people who never before in history had been able to afford such things would be able to now, because the financial institutions were able to extend them unlimited credit. So what do you create? You create people who are convinced that they don't need to do things for themselves. That they will be most completed if they buy the things that other people have made for them to complete themselves. Here's an interesting factoid which gives us an example. In 1926, Cecil B. DeMille made the first version of the movie Ben-Hur, an ancient Roman saga. And he knew that he would have to use, in the making of the costumes, his seamstresses would have to use stitches that were faithful to original Roman costuming. Why? Because all of the women in the audiences would make their own clothes. And they knew about stitching. And if it was false stitching, they'd know it. To replace civic mobilization, which showed itself in one place in the co-op movement, where you have a bunch of people saying, well, we're poor, we can't afford modern appliances, but what we'll do is we'll form co-ops and we'll pool our resources and we will buy a number of co-ops and have communal kitchens. In the face of that, the government says, well, we don't like this. Here you've got a group that's working together and organized. And such an organized group is going to keep making demands of the government for change. We don't want that. So a whole system of advertising was produced utilizing the new kinds of media to say, you don't have to do that. You don't have to share your appliances with everybody else. You can buy one for your own home. All you have to do is borrow the money. The manufacturer will extend, or the retailer will extend you a loan. There'll be financing, or the banks will extend you a loan. That was done deliberately to stop people from organizing, from doing things for themselves. Because independent people make demands on government. It's not what the government wanted. We are told that self-love is so important, and that self-love can only be achieved if we gift ourselves sufficiently, so that we won't do the kinds of things that adults do. Because adults aren't consumers. Adults are citizens, and citizens make demands on people in power. And lives of people in power are easier if people don't make demands on them.
But aren't these messages just coming from regular people, not the government?
Where do you think people get their ideas? People get their ideas from what they hear, what they see, what is around them all the time. And then, now with the invention of social media, it's great. Then you can live in a drum where the same ideas are repeated over and over and over again, and only those ideas with which you're comfortable. And that's all you need here. And you can hear it all the time. You don't even have to buy anything. You can just go into your drum and listen to the ideas repeated over and over and over again. And you make no demands on anybody at all.